Can I ask you to remain standing, please, for prayers? Thank you.
Let us pray. The famous words of St. Francis.
Your mobile phones before we start, please. I'll put them on silent. Please be seated. If you wish, yeah. Could we please stand for a minute's silence for the loss of the two men in the accident at South Bank Coke Ovens, please? Thank you.
I'd just like to offer a few words of condolence. On behalf of the Labour group, I would like to offer our sincere condolences to the families of the two men, John McKay and Tommy Williams, who were taken from us so tragically while carrying out the work at the old coke ovens in South Bank. We cannot imagine the pain that those families must have been suffering because of the terrible circumstances around the loss of these men. Our love and thoughts go out to them. And while I have the floor, I'd also like, on behalf of the Labour group, to offer our sincere condolences to the loss of Jade Smith, to her family and friends, and our sadness at the loss of this young, vibrant woman. She was featured on the Mighty Redcar documentary, representing one of a number of young people in and around the town. To feel so lost and alone and not knowing who to turn to while surrounded by so many who work in public service is a tragedy. It shows how we can easily miss the signs of depression and how those suffering can conceal their innermost thoughts and not speak out. I call on this council and all members to do as much as they can to prevent loss by bringing awareness to depression and suicide and mental health issues, and signposting where the support is. I applaud and support all efforts that offer hope and help, particularly at the well-known locations in this borough, and trust these efforts are successful. Our love and thoughts go out to Jade's family and to all those who suffer in silence. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Quartermain. I'm sure the members of this gallery endorse all the words that you've spoken, and our thoughts go out to all those that are left. On to item 1. Could we have apologies for absence, please?
On what Councillor Quartermain has said.
Go ahead then, Councillor Kerr.
Yes, of course today is World Mental Health Day, and I think it's pertinent, following from what Councillor Quartermain is saying, with which I totally agree. Councillor Ovens and I, in fact, attended an event at Inspire to Learn this morning, and I think that was the main thrust of the speakers, that people hold this depression or whatever the problem is within themselves and are frightened to share with other people. And of course the purpose of today is to get people to be more open about mental health problems and for them not to be stigmatized. So I think I agree with you entirely on that particular point.
Thank you, Councillor Kate. Apologies for absence.
Give apologies for Councillor Brady, and not to worry, he's here.
Right, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Declarations of interest. I think the form will be going round. I don't know where it's at, but it's coming round to you eventually. Can we propose the accuracy of the minutes for the meeting held on the 18th of July and the special meeting held on the 24th of July? I have a proposer that's correct. And a seconder. Thank you. Item 4 is my announcements. Firstly, could I thank everybody who attended my civic service on Sunday, the 6th of October. It went really well and was well attended by the local community. A couple of charity fundraisers to mention. As you will have noticed, Councillor Adam Brooke and friends have been collecting today in aid of Redcar Cleveland Mine. They did a sponsored walk this morning, setting off at 10 AM from Grangestown to arrive in Redcar in a memory of a close friend and also to mark World Mental Health Day. Well done on completing the walk, Adam and your friends. This coming Sunday, I will be doing a sponsored charity bike ride when I aim to ride 50 miles to raise money for my charity fund in aid of Zoe's Place and Eva's Women's Aid. Any sponsorship would be most welcome, and thanks to those who already contributed. Leader of the Council, have any announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, in July, the Council welcomes the Princess Royal to the Borough, and she joined the 50th anniversary celebrations for the Cleveland Way and met volunteers at Zetland Museum. The mighty weekend attracted thousands of people to events across Saltburn, Redcar, Gisborough, Summer Sounds, Clubland on the Beach, Saltburn Food Festival and proms in the Priory were among the highlights of an action-packed 3 days. In August, the Council welcomed the announcement of a preferred bidder for British Steel after weeks of hard work from the authority and partners at a national and local level. The Council's work to transform the young lives through apprenticeships and work experience won yet another national award in August. We are very proud to achieve the Princess Royal Training Award standard for 2019, and we are actually the only local authority to do so. In September, thousands of people came to Kirkleatham to the Festival of Thrift. The festival continues to grow and bring national recognition to the borough. Also last month, Cabinet approved a new buy local scheme designed to encourage organisations and employees across the Tees Valley to use the borough's businesses. This month, we had the wonderful news of an interactive exhibition at Kirkleatham Museum, which celebrates our steel and industrial heritage, and actually it's won a national award. Steel Stories was successful in the Best Small Project category in the museum's Change Life Awards, which was held in Brighton. The exhibition is a result of 12 months of community engagement and research showcasing stories, artifacts, and pictures from people who worked and lived in the steel industry and community. Tens of thousands of people have visited the museum to see steel stories, and it really is something that we can be proud of in the borough. I would like to invite Joanne Hodgson, the Culture Service Coordinator, and Councillor King, the Cabinet Member for Culture, to present the award to the Mayor on behalf of the Council. Thank you.
I wonder if, sorry, the mic wasn't on. I wonder if I can just comment briefly on the Steel Stories exhibition, please. Thank you. I just wanted to put on record my thanks to everybody who was involved in the Steel Stories exhibition. It was an absolutely excellent thing, and it started from the SSI task force, obviously the closure of SSI, obviously thinking about what is the history of our borough in relation to steel and steel making. And the exhibition that's there tells that history so well, with the voices of the people that worked there, their artifacts and all the things that sort of came from that, from the eras that have gone over while the exhibition covers. I just really feel that we should be very, very proud of that exhibition. It's absolutely excellent, and I think it very much deserved that award. And I just wanted to add my thanks to everybody who was involved in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. We move on to announcements from Cabinet members. Councillor Barnes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just I wanted to mention to Council the 60th birthday celebrations of Kirkleatham Special School. I was there, as was the Mayor, and had a very interesting tour. But the other thing I wanted to say was that although the facilities there are excellent, their sensory room is looking very, very tired at the moment, and the Friends of Kirkleatham School are seeking to raise money to improve it. So it's a very worthwhile cause. They're looking to raise £30,000, which sounds an awful lot of money, but actually obviously the hoists and things like that, which are incorporated within the room, are very, very expensive. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody that donated and took part in my raffles for the diamond and whatever. I did manage to raise £15,500 for SAFA, and I think that'll go a long way to helping ex-service people with mental health and homeless issues. So I'd just like to thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I mean it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mary Ovens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was delighted, along with some other councillors, the leader and Councillor King and Councillor here, to attend the official opening last Thursday, the 3rd, of Gisborough Central. It's a day centre for our folk with learning disabilities and replaces 2 smaller facilities at North Skelton and Broughton. It's a wonderful, welcoming, bright facility with dedicated staff and a great variety of activities, among which, relating to mental health indeed, will be a lot of gardening in the spring to come, and that's supposed to be very therapeutic. Both the people who attend the centre and their carers are more than happy with the move. This has brought the facility into Gisborough, and they can be much more part of that Gisborough community and taking on the opportunities there to join other groups, to go down to the library, to get into the town. And I'd just like to wish them every success. I would also like to add my congratulations to Councillor Adam Brooke. It's already been mentioned. Councillor Kay and I attended an event for Mental Health Day, and I think it's very important to keep this at the forefront of our minds and to be as supportive of the various services that we can offer for people who are suffering from mental health, regardless of their age. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ovens. We move on to item 5, announcements from the Chief Executive, Senior Management.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got 2 announcements. Firstly, just to say that you've got myself and Andrew here today because the Corporate Director of Resources and the Monitoring Officer, they've got a conflict of interest in item 7A later on the agenda. And then secondly, to welcome Catherine Bolton to her first meeting of full council. There she is over there in the corner. So Catherine joined us on the 30th of September as replacement for Barbara Shaw, and I will all want to wish her success in a new role. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Move on to item 6, questions from public.
Good afternoon, Council. I've got 3 questions, but before I actually ask them, can I just read through this? I care for the future of my community and want to do what I can to help maintain standards and reduce costs. I recently talked to Redcar and Cleveland Trade Waste leaders. They showed complete commitment to confidentiality, so could only discuss information available on the internet and the Council website. I hope they found me helpful, respectful and knowledgeable. Over the last 6 months and prior to the meeting, I viewed the Council website, talked to businesses and determined I could help the businesses improve their recycle procedures, reduce waste and save the Council money. So save this Council and the people it serves money. The most successful people in the world have coaches. If you employ me, I will be the recycle coach. My job will be to help businesses recycle responsibly and save the Council money. I hope you see my questions, which I'm going to ask now, show respect for others. The first question, does this Council care about business recycling in Gisborough? I address that question to Councillor Hunt.
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, Mr. Page, to the Redcar Cleveland Full Council meeting. I would just like, for clarity, just to say that Mr. Page is not here, although he's a councillor for Gisborough, he's not here on behalf of Gisborough Council, and also he's not representing any businesses. He's representing his concerns, which I hope to address with respect. So, in answer to your first one, right, we're absolutely committed to increasing the amount of waste recycled within the borough. And in order to do that, we provide a recycling service to businesses and business to reduce the residual waste bin, as well as the size of the frequency of the collections, and this will also contribute to helping with the environmental agenda this council is committed to. So the answer is yes to your first question. and I am quite passionately committed to making the best of our waste bins, wasteful waste. So at the end of the day, the answer is yes, Mr. Page.
Mr. Page, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
No, I don't have any other questions. Just the next on the agenda here, there is not a general rule requiring businesses to recycle. So will this council give Gisborough businesses the incentive to recycle responsibly?
In answer to your second question, Mr. Page, we are committed to working with our customers, current and future, to provide the service that they require. As part of this, we have commercially confidentiality discussions with businesses to understand what their needs are, the types of waste and volumes of waste they produce. We can then tailor the offer provided to suit their individual needs, which will include options to recycle their waste. So, once again, we are trying our hardest to do the best for the borough, and will continue to do so.
Again, Mr. Page, would you like a supplementary question?
Sorry. Oh, no, I don't. Thank you.
So question 3, please.
Right. The third question, will this council set a time limit for the incentives to be put in place? The incentives were included in question 2.
Thank you, Mr. Page. The answer to your last question, the council already offers a trade waste service to the businesses of the borough and beyond. We already hold discussions with businesses on what they require and how we can assist them in terms of collections and recycling of their waste, and we will continue to do so. So again, I have a passion to get this right, and we have to have the chance to do this. But without a respect, with respect here, if you don't have another question to come back, I would give you the opportunity to come and meet me and the director and talk about all your concerns and listen and see what we can discuss and do what we can. But you have my uttermost, honesty that I will try to do my best for this old borough with our waste collection. So I hope I instill a little bit of confidence in you, and please take up the opportunity to come and see me. So thank you very much for your questions, Mr. Page.
Is that okay, Mr. Page?
And I shall look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Page, and thank you, Councillor Hunt. We move on to item 7, to consider and agree reports from Cabinet and the Council's committees. Councillor Nightingale, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This proposal is consequential on the changes that took place at the July council meeting. What we're proposing is the appointment of several statutory positions, that John Sampson should take over as head of paid service and returning officer from the 1st of November, that Philip Winstanley be appointed to a new post of Assistant Director for Finance to step up as the 151 officer from the Deputy as of the 1st of November. Thirdly, that Stephen Newton to take on extra responsibilities as the Governance Director. There will need to obviously be consequential changes, and the report actually itemises. There are several positive reasons for these changes. The first is that the Liberal Democrat manifesto commitment was to streamline decision-making and management of the council, and this was adopted by the partnership. This is the first stage that aims to create a flat top management structure with a more collegiate approach. Phase 2 will involve more improvements at an operational level that we shall be announcing later. Secondly, there are clear financial advantages in the proposal. The initial savings, as we itemised in a previous report, will be somewhere around about £250,000, just as a start. But I wish to stress that the financial imperatives that the council faces are not the only priority. Our priority is to ensure that our residents receive the best possible services with the financial constraints that are imposed in this period of continuing austerity that we face. Our ultimate priority is to get things done in a better way by changing the management structure throughout the organisation. And I'm sure that all members will wish to be associated with these objectives and changes. For too long, members have been waiting for clarity on the Council's organisational setup, greater focus on key priorities that residents are crying out for, and a drive to get things done better. To get this process underway then, members of the Council, I commend this to you, and I hope you will vote, and let's get these changes done.
Thank you, Councillor Nightingale. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Councillor Quartermain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, we have the utmost respect for John Sampson and do not doubt his abilities, and we applaud and thank him for his service that he's given to this council. Equally, we recognise the service and applaud and thank Phil Stanley, as we do Steve Newton. They are having their roles redesignated and as such are incorporating extra responsibility. However, this council has not provided enough information of the job descriptions and the terms and conditions that go with these roles. Not only are we uncertain what exactly these roles consist of, but we are unclear whether these are promotions and how that reflects clearly in relation to salaries. This is very important given that the administration released our chief executive to make considerable savings. We need to know when these savings will kick in, sometime in 2021 apparently, and be provided with accurate costings which have not been forthcoming. I'm also advised, although it's unconfirmed, that we have recently taken on extra staff, an extra staff member to support the finance department. If this is true, would this person be in the role if we still had the chief executive? And how does that impact on the savings? Will the savings kick in then by 2022? Finally, there is a process in the world of work that gives employees and external job seekers hope and opportunity. It's one that belongs to a healthy culture, one that doesn't discriminate and avoids bias and laziness. It's a process that promotes openness, fairness, and transparency. It's the same process we use, whether recruiting a cleaner, a caretaker, an officer, manager, director, or even managing director. It's called the selection process and requires a job interview alongside other applicants. Because of these vagaries around the role, the uncertainty of cost savings, and because it doesn't promote best practice in recruitment, and because your own reasoning to hand out jobs is based on length of service, we will be voting against this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quartermain. Councillor Foggo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support this new structure, but can I just ask why the monitoring to the governance director is starting in the 1st of April when the rest are starting on the 1st of November?
Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would support this proposal. I will support this proposal, but it goes back to the vote at the special meeting that we had when we were told that the chief executive would be leaving. And what I said then was we needed to see the fuller picture. We're told we save X because this body is gone. What we're getting is piecemeal doing this now. Nobody is telling us what the next step is. I question whether the next step is even thought out. Before we can say we are saving money, we need to see the balance sheet of the entire proposed new structure. One has gone, others are juggling around. We can't say we're winning till we know the full picture.
Thank you, Councillor Watts. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. I think I said at the special meeting that the report that I read was the worst report that I'd ever seen. And I think I would reiterate it in relation to this report as well. And I made some notes this morning about the numbers of reasons I won't be voting for it. And I started off with 3, and I've ended up with 7. So as I've gone through it, I've found more reasons why this report should not be supported, and it should not be supported by anybody sat in this chamber, to be perfectly honest. There's a number of key reasons for it, many of which Councillor Quartermain have already said, but I'm going to add to them. First of all, the cost of the Chief Executive's package. You were all told how much it was going to cost us, 337k, I think it was. Actually, that cost has now gone up in this report to 387k. So it's more than you said. We were told originally it was going to cost. It has gone up. And so the costs are more significant. It's going to deplete our reserves by £250,000. And I don't know about you, but I've been hearing a number of people talk about how far our reserves have been depleted, and now we're going to see yet again further depletion, and the question mark is about for what benefit. The savings figure has been boosted by the inclusion of the deletion of a temporary admin post. That temporary admin post would not have been within the main funding for our staffing structure, and it'd be by virtue of the fact that it was temporary. And those of you who've bothered to read the annex, which is the recommendations from the LGA, you will see that they make it very clear that the salaries that we are paying are not in fact commensurate with the jobs that we're asking people to do, and it is likely that staff will be coming back to us quite quickly asking for higher salaries, and would be perfectly in line to do so. Unlike what Councillor Nightingale has just said, the structure is not flat, it is hierarchical, and it is in fact more hierarchical than it was previously. Our Investors in People Gold Award that we got just a number of months ago praised the structure that we did have, but what we've actually done is we've replaced a Chief Executive with a Managing Director, and we've inserted a permanent deputy, and that permanent deputy is Patrick Rice. And Patrick Rice is not even going to get paid for the pleasure of being the permanent deputy. And again, I'm sure he will come back at some stage and ask us why that is the case. In relation to the decision about who is going to fill the post, I mean, it's just bizarre, to be perfectly honest. Of course we could have interviewed. We could have ring-fenced those interviews to the current senior team, and we could have interviewed. That is the one position, the Managing Director or Chief Executive position, that all members of this council have a right to have a say in. And we have taken away that right from us, and so we haven't been able to do it. And to say that the reason that we're going to appoint somebody is because of their length of service, that as well is bizarre. Length of service, in my mind, has not been a criteria for making a senior appointment for a very, very long time. And it's really sad that we're going back to what appears to be the dark ages. There's no job descriptions, there's no person specifications, and again, unlike Councillor Nightingale said, in relation to key priorities, I'm still waiting for the publication of the key priorities plan that was due at the beginning of October, and I'd be very pleased to see that if Councillor Nightingale could pass it across, because that's when he said it would be available. And so I've always understood that form follows function. But the final point I want to make, and the one I think that should worry all of you, is that those 3 posts that we're talking about, and again, this is no discussion about the people involved, because I have every respect for them, have received promotion and pay rises without any competition. And do you know what those pay rises are? Managing Director, 12.6%. Legal and Governance, 17%. Section 151 Officer, 16%.
1 minute,
Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not prepared to vote for a report that gives people those sorts of pay rises, all men as well, I have to say, gives people those sorts of pay rises without a proper selection procedure being undertaken by this council. And this report is unacceptable, and I certainly will not be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Lanigan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm appalled. This administration was left with financial difficulties. We had to look at that. And no matter what they're saying from the other side of the chamber, there are savings to be made in this. We spoke to the LGA. We consulted senior management that we had here before making that decision, along with the chief executive. So let's not forget that. John Sampson is highly regarded in this authority. And after long discussions with him, he agreed to do this willingly. We don't need to go out to get the right people in place for this authority. And I hope that every single one of you in this chamber, apart from the Labour group who've already made their position clear that they are voting against this, will vote for this. It is a flatline structure, and what we've got there, we had to make sure that there was somebody there in place to oversee the directors that we've got here. It is working extremely well, no matter what you think on that side of the chamber. It is excellent. This isn't just Redcar and Cleveland, and I explained that to you at the last meeting. Stockton did this, Darlington did this, Derbyshire have done this, several of the county councils throughout this country, and there will be more of them taking this forward. And I can absolutely assure you, we are looking at the structure underneath that as well. Because what we've inherited from that side of the room is appalling. And we have to make sure that we have a balanced budget going forward. And so changes have to be made. You can't continue to go on and on and on in the same vein without making differences, and that's what we're doing. And Councillor Watts, from her comments that she said there is another structure. It is coming. You will all be involved in that. We have to make savings, and we can't make savings at the bottom. We can't cut frontline services. And we have taken on this responsibility to make sure that we get a balanced budget. And I'm asking every single one of you in this chamber, apart from those who've said they're not going to do it, to back this. We've got good stuff there, and we can go forward together. Thank you, Miss.
Thank you, Councillor Lanigan. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at the recommendation, and that relates to Cabinet Minute number 19. Now, Cabinet Minute number 19 appears in page 17 of our order paper. And I'm drawn to para 3 of the minute details, which advises us that Resources, Scrutiny and Improvement did have the opportunity of discussing this proposal, a proposal that had been agreed by this council on the 24th of July. It has also been referred to the Governance Committee. Now, arising out of those two eminent bodies, there was a request for further information to be circulated, and I'm assuming that that was done in response to the request by Scrutiny. Now, if for any reason this additional information was not provided, then I think there needs to be an explanation as to why that did not happen. I'm also referring to the Governance Committee. On the governance committee, senior management structure, we were advised that staffing changes needed to be communicated more clearly to members, so that members were always aware of the correct officer to contact. Well, I think that's an admirable aspiration. However, I don't think that we're actually meeting that. One example being a meeting I attended on Tuesday. The officer we wanted to contact had apparently left the previous day, unbeknown to members who were present. So I think this is inherent in our current system, the lack of communication to members of staffing structure and any movement within that, be it promotion or indeed retirement for whatever reason. So I'm interested in what Councillor Nightingale advises, that more improvements in operational services are in the pipeline, but what I would definitely request is that all members are fully consulted on any new structures that are being proposed. Councillor Lanigan has advised us that this is already the intent of the partnership, and we welcome that. And there is in fact going to be a members' meeting shortly, at which we will have that opportunity. So, Mr. Mayor, I can understand the reservations of some members of this council, but I would remind members that the wish for voluntary redundancy of the chief executive set in train a process that has been handled in the manner that it has, through circumstances, through guidance of senior officers, and through the experience of those members who serve in the cabinet. So on that basis, I think it is incumbent upon us to support their recommendation with the caveats that I have mentioned, Mr. Mayor.
1 minute, Councillor Thompson.
So I personally will be supporting, and I encourage all members to do so as well.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the first point, as it's been raised, I'd like to make is that obviously I presented the budget to the council for the 4 years preceding this one, and that budget was balanced 3 out of those 4 years, and one of the years it was only very narrowly overspent. And all councillors took part in those decisions. All councillors voted for those budgets. We were a minority administration for 4 years, so to come crying wolf now I think is a little rich. A couple of you did object to the budgets every year, but never said anything constructive about how we could do anything differently. And I hope that from this side, we'll certainly try and have a constructive dialogue about our future budget setting, and I look forward to the member conference that we had following the submission of our motion that we're going to have coming up. I think the important thing to notice here, a lot of... You can't raise a point of objection, it's not in the Constitution.
I can raise a point of objection if I so choose.
Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, we are berated by suggestion that no members have historically suggested positive measures to save council money, but in revenue and capital. Do you want my speeches over the last 10 years?
I don't think I have time.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that what I was going to say that's more pertinent about the discussion that we're having is that, you know, this side, or I mean the Labour group on this side, we're not opposing the new structure whatsoever. I think it's quite a clever way of looking at a leadership in a council with a new light. What we're opposed to is the fait accompli we're being presented with about how we fill that new structure. That's the thing that I think has given us a bit of pause for thought here. You know, the fact that we do, as Sue has said quite clearly, we have, you know, 3 members of staff who we all, I think, you know, value at the council, but we're getting large pay rises, certainly pay rises above anything I've ever seen in my life. To keep in roles when we haven't, you know, I'm not saying those staff can't do the job, but we have no idea what's out there if they could do it any better because we haven't asked, we haven't looked. And I think that's something that I really feel is a shame about this report, because there's a lot of it that I do support, and I'll say that here, but because of the fact that it's a fait accompli, I don't think I can vote for this.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. Councillor Cook.
Thank you. What I asked for at the last council meeting was some transparency, and then what I asked for at the last scrutiny was some transparency, and we were assured we would get a breakdown of the savings against the timeline and when those would be realised, and we didn't get it. And I just don't understand why we're not open and honest about the process. It seems veiled. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Nightingale, would you like to sum up, please?
Yes, well, I suppose I'm disappointed with the Labour response. It's obviously not unexpected. They have moved into opposition mode. They haven't provided us with an alternative, although Councillor Massey did imply that this was sort of a good idea, really, but he would have liked more information. On the issue of information, I do recall several occasions when the Labour administration regularly made changes to administration of the management of the council, and it just suddenly happened, and we never got any proper information about this. Obviously, costings will be fully undertaken, and they will be available when we get the budget, and there will be more information. Some of the second phase issues are fairly delicate, and obviously we don't want to create any complications. On the question of Councillor Foggo, why the appointment of the governance manager is in April, this is due to consequential issues concerning early retirement and the consolidation of the one of the sections of the resources department. On the point that Councillor Watts made, I just don't see anything wrong at all in any way, shape or form in doing this in a phased way. On the points that Councillor Sue Jeffrey made, she mentioned the £360,000 target. This is a target, right? And it is, well, of course it has, and I think that shows that we are looking after that's a target for saving, yeah, and it shows that we are on the ball. I certainly welcome the contribution from Councillor Thompson, and it is a reminder that he did remind us that there has been a fairly hefty process where information has been shared, where information has been given, and where the debates on this particular issue could actually be raised. On the staffing changes, he's absolutely rock solid, certainly right. That there have historically been changes in staffing, and members of this council have been unaware of this, and I wonder who was actually running the council when this actually took place. And I think one of the steps forward that did actually take place after the election was that there was a booklet that did give information to members on who they could contact. That obviously needs to be updated, and I'll certainly be making strenuous efforts to make sure that actually takes place. The issue that was raised by Councillor Quatermain and Councillor Massey about the selection process, and they did compliment the members of staff who are actually going to be in the new posts. So it is a little bit strange that they were calling for something like open competition. Legally, we only need to appoint on merit, and quite clearly we think that the people that we are appointing, hopefully today when people vote on this, do have the merit to do the job. Were they suggesting that if they got the job with open competition that they would be suggesting, I'm quite sure, that we've been wasting our time and why did we go through this sort of process. If they didn't get the job, there would certainly be consequential redundancy costs to take. On the point that
1 minute,
I
Councillor
made earlier
Nightingale.
on and has been challenged about having a flat top structure, quite clearly the idea is that and I think this was mentioned at each of the meetings that we've had about this, that the directors will be taking on the external role of the chief executive, and it will be part of a collegiate approach, which is something that we all should welcome in this council. The issue of this is that we are dealing with financial issues and organisational issues where we're living in a world of uncertainty. What we're trying to do is bring some more certainty to the way in which this council is run. And I do commend this approach to all members of the council. Please support this and let's get on with the job.
Thank you, Councillor Nightingale. There's no more speakers, so we'll put it to the vote to accept Councillor Nightingale's report. All those in favour? And those against? It's 37 for and 14 against, so it's carried. We move on to item B, which is Saltburn.
Only interest in this item, please. Thank you.
So we move to item B. Councillor Davies, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, this report, Mr. Mayor, has been going for a while, so it's obviously pre my time in this role. So I'll make it short and sweet. I'll commend the report to council. It's obviously been through it's been through the council processes. It's been to scrutiny. It's been through the ward members. I'll take this opportunity to thank Tim Brown, our conservation officer, if you make sure that gets back to him, for putting all the effort and work into it, and obviously look forward to getting round to doing the rest of them for the rest of the borough, and happy to take any questions.
Could we have a seconder, please?
So have the right to speak.
Okay, for Councillor Halligan. Councillor Hannaway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you said, Councillor Davies, this has had a long journey, this management plan, so I don't feel the need to comment on the plan in particular. So I'd just like to echo your thanks of Tim Brown, who is now our only conservation officer, so has had a lot of work to do with this. And just to stress that it's very important that we make sure that everybody in Saltburn knows about the plan, because they could find themselves with a nasty surprise if they apply for planning permission without realising the consequences of living in a conservation area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaway. Councillor Stewart-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Regulatory Chair and obviously Ward Councillor for Saltburn, I would also like to thank Tim for his work in relation to this conservation area management plan. It has taken quite a while, but I can report that we have consulted with our residents and it has been, in the whole, welcomed. It will enable us to preserve and enhance the conservation area and how it's monitored. And this will be one of the first ones, well, it is the first one that has been done. And I think the majority of our wards have conservation areas and they will be looked at in the future. So I do welcome it and I will look forward to seeing the other conservation plans for the other ward areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to echo the sentiments expressed by fellow Saltburn Ward members in respect of the Conservation Officer. There are several elements to this that we must understand. the proposal that's before us this afternoon asks us to endorse the draft proposal for the management plan. If we accept the plan, it isn't the end of the stage of progressing it. There are no powers that we currently have that will really allow enforcement of the recommendations contained within this conservation area management plan. So the next stage is to come back to council, to ask for these powers, to go out to the residents, to consult on them as to whether they are prepared to allow the council to have these powers. So all of this work that so far has been done, which has taken an inordinate time, as we've heard, too long, but we are where we are. So the next stage, I would ask that we proceed with at all speed. A draft has sat in portfolio's tray since December 2013. We are now almost at the end of 2019. So that has to come. Let us proceed with that. Make no mistake that if the recommendations in the management plan are to come to fruition, there will be a cost to residents in observance. So it isn't just passing a plan for the sake of it. It's in recognition that if people need to conform, there is highly likely to be a cost to that. And that's the judgment that we have to make as a chamber today to make that recommendation on the next stage. What I would say is that very, very few people know that they even live in a conservation area. How many times have I asked that when we send out our tax demand, that we advise members, residents, if they live in a conservation area or not? Because they need to know that they have that responsibility. It's all very well passing this afternoon, which I hope we will, a document. But in practice, residents have to know that it appertains to them as individuals. So I reiterate my annual request that can we better communicate with residents who do live in a conservation area, that they understand that they do, that they understand what their responsibilities are as a result of that. Now, Saltburn is the first, it's the pilot. There are 15 more to go. If it's taken us 6 years to get through this stage, and even if we refine that to 2 years, that's another 30 years before every conservation area has a management plan. That's not
1 minute,
good
Councillor
enough.
Thompson.
Not good enough. Therefore, what I would urge, Leader, is that we give some consideration to resource allocation to address this obvious deficit if we genuinely believe that conservation areas have merit. I support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. We now go to the vote. There's no more speakers. Councillor Davies, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just take on board Councillor Hanaway's comments first, that yeah, we'll obviously look to see if we can do some sort of promotion through the wide publications of the council, just to let people know that this has taken place. Thank Councillor Smith for his input, and thank Councillor Thompson for his input as well. Obviously gives us a lot more food for thought most times. But I take on board what you've said, and obviously we'll look at doing something we can maybe discuss at looking at some form of advice for people living in a conservation area. And yeah, I take on board what you say as well about the list of the conservation areas that need still to be done. The one bit of saving grace, I think, is that Tim is already on with a lot of them, and he obviously knows the areas well. And obviously some of the areas aren't as big as Saltburn, so hopefully it won't be too much of a bigger issue as we start moving forward with the rest of them as well. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. We now go to the vote. For all those who accept the report, all those in favour? Fifty-two people in favour is carried. Will do, Councillor Kay, thanks. We move on to item C, children in care and child sexual exploitation. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fellow councillors. At the end of August 2019, the number of children in our care was 322. And if you look at paragraph 2.2, you will see how this figure is made up. The fostering team held a summer barbecue event for foster carers and their children, which was very well received. 2 recruitment events for foster carers, potential foster carers, were held in July and August, and this has led to an increase in initial visits and subsequently 5 potential carers attending Skills to Foster. We have seen an increase in the reliance on unregulated placements for our 16 to 17-year-old children in our care. The purpose is to prepare young people for independence, and although these settings are not inspected by Ofsted, there is robust scrutiny by the council. There are a number of children and young people who have been in care for a significant period, and there is no prospect of them going back to their families. In some instances, in order to secure permanence, it would be more appropriate for them to obtain a special guardianship order. It would offer the same level of support, but it would mean that the children and their carers would be able to make decisions independently. The Children in Care Council have recruited 3 new people over the past couple of months, and they have been working on various themes which are indicated in paragraph 4. This year's Annual Achievement Awards for Children in Our Care and Care Leavers will be held on Friday the 1st of November at Saltburn Learning Campus, and I would urge as many councillors as possible to attend. For the past 4 years, the young people of Have Your Say group have played a central role in the development of our Regional Children in Care Council Forum. They've been involved in the planning and delivery of a number of events, and they are able to share this good practice throughout the North East. The virtual school has a newly appointed head teacher, who is Jo Johnson, who started on the 2nd of September, and she is supported by a deputy, Anita Swales. One of the 205 children who are in the virtual school, 147 of them are in schools or academies which are graded as good or better. There are 83 pupils in primary schools, of those an additional 14 in reception, and 50 pupils in secondary. And if you actually look at paragraph 5.2, you'll be able to see that the majority of the children in our care are educated in the local area. Paragraph 5.3 shows the GCSE and other examination results, and we were pleased to notice that 2 pupils who are unaccompanied asylum seekers were able to receive pre-entry and entry-level qualifications, and 4 pupils gained attainment 8 scores. This means that they achieved the equivalent of their school's average score over 8 qualifications, including maths and English. We currently have 58 young people who are classed as in education or training, and the 9 young people are classed as NEET, which is not in education, employment or training. And if you look at 5.5, you'll see the breakdown, in fact showing that within the last week, well, just over that, we've had an additional 5 young people in that category. For the academic year 2018-19, 31 of the children in our care received fixed terms exclusions. However, pleased to note that there were no permanent exclusions. And if you look at paragraph 5.6, you'll see the alternatives that were offered. The Leaving Care Service is working with 146 young people, and 16 of these are care leavers who are over 21 years of age. There is a dedicated career advisor in the Leaving Care team who has helped to develop packages of support for young people, and we are pleased to note that the council and others have been able to offer 5 apprenticeships to children in our care. And if you look at paragraph 6.1, you will see that there are numerous other examples of the achievements of our care leavers. I'd particularly like to mention that 5 of the care leavers are studying in universities, including one young person who has been accepted to Cambridge University, and another one who has achieved a first-class honours degree and is going on to undertake a PhD. Over the last few months, we've experienced a surge in the number of unaccompanied asylum seekers arriving through Teesport on an unplanned basis. These children are mostly males who are claiming to be 16 to 17 years of age. We currently have 18 unaccompanied asylum seekers in our care, and we provide leaving care services to another 11. We work closely with the North East Migration Partnership, and we have successfully received 2 Eritrean males from Niger. The Families Together service have now relocated to the Gisborough Family Hub, and there's been a steady flow of referrals for edge of care and crisis interventions. In August, there were 9 crisis situations, and I'm pleased to report, as a result of their intervention, none of the 13 children involved became children in our care. It's been a challenging summer for the Family Time Service due to a steady increase in referrals, and in August we provided an average of 230 hours of family time to 104 families. As of the 31st of August, 21 children and young people were open to the Vulnerable, Exploited, Missing and Trafficked Practitioner Group, comprising of 15 females and 6 males. The age range is from 13 to 17, and all are classified as white British. In order to raise awareness of child sexual exploitation to this vulnerable age group, Redcar and Cleveland Borough Council VAEMT coordinator and a spokesperson from Barnardo's attended Freshers' Fairs events at both Redcar and Cleveland College and Prior Purscliffe College in September 2019. The VEMT publicity campaign remains ongoing, and an analysis of the campaign using Facebook highlighted that by 5 p.m. on the first day of the campaign, the post had reached 6,535 people, and 156 people had read or reacted to the post, and 69 individuals shared this information with their network. There are presently 4 task and finish groups ongoing with partner agencies, and if you look at the list below, you'll see the areas that they are particularly concentrating on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Councillor Quartermain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor, for your report. I think we can all agree what a really encouraging report this is. Actually, there's a lot of really good stuff in this, and I really picked up on, some of the work the services are doing there and how they involve the children. I was impressed with the Regional Children's in Care Council Forum that allows children to be part of the planning and delivery of events and in what they do. I'll be brief. The other thing I was really impressed with was, within our leaving care service, with the qualifications that these children, young adults have been achieving, is a real testament to the work that's being done there as well, and the support that these young people receive. All I would ask for within your reports and probably your annual report as well is some sort of like year-on-year comparisons and comparable figures with other areas, particularly around things like NEETs and EATs and all that kind of stuff. But thank you very much for your report.
Thank you, Councillor Quartermain. Councillor Corley.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes, for a report, but reading 7.0, the child sexual exploitation, what worries me is that as a local authority, we look after our children quite well, right up till they're 25. What's shocking is that as a 16 and a 17-year-old, they're known as old enough to know better. When a child is being exploited sexually or that seeing every child should matter, every child should have the same voice. And it's quite sad when you think that years down the line we're still not learning lessons, and the government need to learn that a child under the age of 18 or even 21 has the same voice as a child that's 10. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corley. Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, a very good detailed report. I do find them interesting. But I do have one problem, or 2 problems actually. One is that we recently heard about the police assessment, and one area in which they had been failing was in child sexual exploitation. Now, this is done jointly with our children's department, and I would question why we weren't aware that things were going wrong from the police side of view. And if we were aware, what were we doing about it? Because it does have serious repercussions for these young children. Another thing that I would like a little more information on is the unaccompanied asylum seekers. Some children are claiming to be 16 and 17. This has always gone on because it's an easy way in. But I wondered what checks long term, we accommodate them, yes, but longer term, what checks do we do on these children? I do appreciate this sort of information because previously we've had a very glossy view of children's services. We're all going on a picnic. And I do like to hear the warts and all, because in scrutiny, we can only do an efficient job if we know where we're going wrong. But thank you anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Watts. Councillor Ovens.
Mr. Mayor, which is on a very positive on 6.1, and to reiterate the achievements of our looked after children, because I think so often they get a bad press, and it reflects badly maybe on the foster care and everything. I think we have a wonderful dedicated group of people who look after these young people, and to see achievements like that, not only the university achievements which are great, but the other avenues for them to get into employment is really good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ovens. Councillor Hannaway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your report, Councillor Barnes. I just wanted to ask one question on the subject of education. In paragraph 5.3, it shows the educational achievements of our children in care. And while we celebrate them, we have to acknowledge that they're always low in comparison with children who aren't in care. And that reflects, obviously, the great difficulty that they have in their backgrounds, and also particular issues, like when teenagers come into care, they're almost always already very disaffected with school. And there's only a very short time to change that. But what will really help, I think, is the figure in 5.6 that you quoted, which is that there are no permanently excluded children in our care. And I just wondered, what are the prospects for keeping that figure on 0?
Thank you, Councillor Hannaway. Councillor Holyoke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your report, Councillor Barnes. My question is about child sexual exploitation on 7. And you've turned around and you've said on this report, and it's a great initiative, that we had representatives at both of the sixth form colleges. But then, in the first paragraph, we've got children, well, 21 children, and the age range is from 13 to 17. Now, the freshest pairs were for 16 and 17-year-olds. I know sort of when I was first elected to this council, I went to see a production called Chelsea's Choice, which was all about sexual exploitation and trafficking. So what have we got prepared for the younger age group? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holyoke. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Got 4 points. 5. I think we need an amendment before we pass this report, in that Anita Swales, as we've been advised, is deputy head and not school head. So if we could have that amended. On 5.2, we can see that there are still a number, some 70 in total, that are educated outside the authority. 16 of those northeast and further. Are we to understand that with the new build that we are undertaking, that this educational provision will be able to be provided nearer to home? In terms of leaving care service and achievement, it's absolutely admirable of the excellent achievement that those who are listed in respect of university are commended. And I don't want to detract from that at all. But across the range of ability, no one will expect everyone to go to university. Therefore, where people have achieved and attained, we must be absolutely congratulatory of that achievement. So the attainment evening hopefully will reflect that, because not everybody has the same ability, not everybody has the same experience, and we know, regrettably, not everybody has the same opportunity. So where people have achieved, despite perhaps, let us echo that achievement. And finally, I'd just like to comment on the beach house. I was privileged to be present at the opening, and I thought, what wonderful potential this has. And I see that the usage figures are reflecting that potential. So I'm really pleased to see that this, among other projects, is proving positive.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Barnes, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, first of all, in answer to Councillor Quartermain's comment, yes, I think that would be very useful to show comparisons. And I'll make sure that they are included on another occasion. As regards the age of the children who are at risk of sexual exploitation, yes, the age range is 13 to 17, as we were told. I'm not aware of any proposals to have any presentations as anything other than the freshers' fairs. I think it's a new venture anyway, and the reason that it was done was because there would be obviously a lot of young children there, young people there together, and they used it as an opportunity. I certainly think it would be worthwhile, perhaps, potentially move this out into schools in general, and I will investigate that. As regards the comment on the police, I think everyone was aware that the Cleveland Constabulary had problems, and so that the Directorate were aware of it as well. However, in terms of what could we do about it, I wouldn't have thought there was anything, because the train of events was in course, and as we know, eventually it was decided that they were inadequate. We don't know yet what the implications are going to be in respect of children's services. It's quite feasible that it may very well trigger an inspection, a focused inspection or an offset inspection, which is rather unfortunate insofar that, as I say, we really don't have any way of impacting on what the police actually do.
Can you put your mic on, please, because I can't hear you?
You need to put it on up there. The question I was asking was the joint work that we do with the police.
Yeah.
When you go out together, surely things were being picked up regards to the children exploitation. And I'm just wondering, from our point of view, why weren't they picked up? If they were, what were we doing about it? Because these children could be very badly affected.
I don't know the answer to that question, I'm afraid, at this stage. I will find out. In connection with your question regarding the unaccompanied asylum seekers, effectively they claim to be 16 or 17 years of age. We know the reasons why, so that they can avail themselves of the services. We can actually challenge that. However, the way that we do that is very long drawn out and very, very expensive. And unless we are absolutely certain that the young people involved are older than 18, then, to be perfectly honest, it's it's just not worth our while because of the cost and the length of time that it takes. And so therefore, in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases, we do accept what we are told. Councillor Quatermain's question regarding the prospects of keeping the figure at 0%. You will notice that there are various strategies which are put in to actually keep it that way. Yes, including obviously discussions with school leaders, accessing alternative provisions, and so on. You were asking whether or not I think that was, I can't remember who asked it, sorry. Yes. Yeah, well, we would hope that the new provisions also that are coming into
Councillor Barnes,
place.
I'm allowing 1 extra minute because you were interrupted. So you have 1 minute.
Oh, okay. Right. We would hope that we would be able to maintain it as it is, and the new provisions which are coming in may very well help to ease the situation as regards exclusions. And the same applies, of course, to those students who are educated outside of the authority. Having said that, the new provisions are specifically aimed at children with special needs. And of course, a number of our looked after children would fall into that category.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. We'll now vote to accept or deny the report. Can I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move to number 8, to receive reports from portfolio holders. Reports for the Cabinet Member for Children, Councillor Barnes.
Thank you. I'm sorry, it is rather the Alison Barnes show today. Okay. Right, this report provides a summary of what has been happening in the Children and Families Directorate during the period 2018 to date. We have a new director, Catherine Bolton, from October 2019, and I have taken over from Councillor Hannaway, and I will be endeavouring to continue the positive work undertaken by him. During the last year, we have strengthened our partnerships within the Tees Valley. We've introduced signs of safety across the whole directorate, which is an internationally recognised evidence-based approach. And I would urge all councillors to avail themselves of the presentation, which is in fact happening tomorrow on that very subject. We have reshaped some of our services to include a newly formed Edge of Care offer and parenting team, and we have made changes to our education services. We established that we had higher costs on early help services than other local authorities, both regionally and nationally, and a review was undertaken. 12 children's centres delivering universal services have been reduced to 3 main family hubs with targeted services deployed out to the other hubs as required. Each comprises a range of staff and services, for example, health visitors and prevention teams. Our Troubled Families Key Working Team were visited by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government in June 2019, and the teams received positive feedback. We have achieved UNICEF Stage 2 breastfeeding friendly status and are now working towards a joint Stage 3 assessment for both family hubs and health visiting teams. More than 550 young people took part in the DFE Award programme, and 17 received gold awards at Buckingham Palace. We secured a bid of £29,200 from the National Foundation for Music earlier this year, and the service will work with a variety of people to deliver a range of musical activities. Tuned In has had a successful year, with a variety of large-scale events taking place, and more than 500 young people have accessed the provision over 3,000 times, which does not include pupils who have come with their school. The Streets team have continued to deliver valuable interventions in partnership with members of the voluntary sector. Redcar and Cleveland's Children and Young People's Partnership Board was launched in March 2018, and they have recently approved the review of the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment. The Special Educational Needs and Disabilities, the SEND inspection, took place in March 2018, and a written statement of action was required. The key 4 areas are noted in paragraph 2.6.1. A re-inspection is anticipated in May 2020. A head of employability was appointed in October 2018 to reduce the number of NEETs, and a Foundation for Jobs delivery plan has been produced. The inspection of children's services. The director and assistant directors met with Ofsted in April 2018, and a focused visit followed in relation to the front door. This year's annual conversation took place in May, and we are currently awaiting a further focused visit on children in need of help and protection. Signs of safety training commenced in December 2018, and by May 2019, 50 practice leaders had completed the 5-day training. In the first quarter of 2019-20, we received 496 referrals that required social work involvement. Child protection plans increased to 178 in May 2019, the highest it has ever been. We need sufficient staffing levels within social work teams to deliver a safe and effective service, and in response to retention issues, it was agreed to incentivise current staff to remain, whilst also offering a golden hello payment to attract external applicants. All eligible staff have committed to work with Redcar and Cleveland for the next 3 years. A newly formed team was introduced from April this year, known as the Families Together team. And since the team's inception, it has successfully secured 2 lots of central government funding to deliver specialist initiatives to improve outcomes for families. The Reducing Parental Conflict programme secured £40,000 from the Department of Work and Pensions. The Department of Education provided £78,500 to implement family group conferencing, and we have also bid to the Department of Education under its Strengthening Families programme, and if successful, we will work with North Yorkshire on the development of a no-wrong door model which supports young people who are on the edge of or in the care system. The fostering team's recruitment campaign has identified 36 individuals after initial screening who are interested in becoming foster carers. The South Tees Safeguarding Partnership, led by Middlesbrough, commences from the end of September this year and consists of 3 safeguarding partners, local authorities, chief officers of police, and clinical commissioning groups. The multi-agency children's hub, The Match, opened on the 3rd of June this year. We are the lead authority, and this has seen the creation of an integrated service involving Cleveland Police and health partners joining forces with both local authorities. We are very proud of our principal social worker, Louise Walker, who was awarded an MBE in the 2019 honours list. There has been a full-scale review of the educational services to increase our capacity to support and challenge schools to raise standards, particularly for vulnerable learners. And 3 key strategies to improve outcomes were launched during the last academic year: the Alternative Provision Strategy, the Mobility Strategy, and the Transition Strategy. The Alternative Provision Strategy has provided 3 new provisions: the Bruce Centre Skelton for secondary pupils at risk of exclusion, the Haven in Errington Primary School for primary pupils at risk of exclusion, and strive at Prior Purslow College for anxious medical and school-phobic secondary pupils. New specialist provisions are provided so pupils can attend a school in their local area. The Mo Molam Academy is expected to be completed by September 2020. A new free special school in Grangetown will create more provision, and building work should commence in 2020. In addition, a new venture is planned to provide more support for children with autism in the Coopers Centre in South Bank. School performance. Local primary schools continue to perform well, but the end of Key Stage 4 in secondary schools remains below national and regional standards, and exclusion rates are also concerning. In the virtual school, progress has been positive. A peer review was conducted by the National Association of Virtual School Head Teachers in October 2018, and most of the areas have been addressed, but if you look at 4.4.2, you'll see the improvements that are still outstanding. In February 2019, the virtual school introduced a post-16 personal education plan, and they now have a careers and needs advisor. In conclusion, this is my first annual report to Council, and in reality, I have only been part of the team for less than half of that time. I have received a huge amount of support from all of the officers in the Directorate, so thank you to all of them. There have been some exciting developments in the last 12 months, and the strength of partnership working between the local authority and other agencies continues to evolve. It is right to celebrate our successes, but this must not blind us to the challenges that we face in terms of the increasing numbers of children in our care, the pressure on our social work teams, standards in our secondary schools, and our statutory responsibilities. In addition, financial pressures continue to cause anxiety, not only locally, but across the whole country. Finally, as a newcomer to local government, I have been overwhelmed by the hard work and professionalism of every member of staff that I have encountered, and their desire to make a positive difference to the lives of the children and young people in our borough, and I thank them for that too.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. This is a question and answer session, so questions must be succinct and relate directly to the matters within the report. Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you. It's a very comprehensive report, but there's one area that hasn't really been covered, and that's in the adoption area. And that's the situation where grandparents are virtual adopters. There seems to be no support for grandparents in this situation. For a number of years, I know somebody who's been looking after their granddaughter, because their mother was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and they get no support whatsoever to look after that child. They can't adopt for a number of reasons. What are we doing about that black hole which has been around this area for quite a while? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Councillor Hannaway. Sorry, Councillor Hannaway, I haven't allowed Councillor Barnes to reply. Apologies, Councillor Barnes.
Right, it's my understanding that that grandparents are able to access the kinship care package, and the other alternative is for them to apply for special guardianship, which provides the same support as it would do if they were foster carers, but gives them a lot more autonomy on how they their relationship with the children who they're looking after. Yeah, the kinship carer package, of course, includes financial report. I don't know off the top of my head how much it is.
Councillor Hanway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in the arena of early help, in paragraph 2.1, could I just ask for you to say something a bit more explicitly. Obviously, we had to take funding from early help and put more of it into safeguarding, which no council would do willingly, but government cuts necessitated it. It says that we are continuing to support the most vulnerable children and also signpost families to other providers, and obviously that's very good to hear. But I just wonder if you could say explicitly that although we can no longer do universal support, that every child that needs help will get it. And the only other part I wanted to comment on was page 11. On page 11, this is the only part of your very thorough report where I felt there could be some more information, particularly in regard to the Children and Young People's Partnership Board, which has a very large remit. It is the place where we hold CAMs to account, for example, when they turn up. And so I think there's been a lot of work on that board over the past year. I think we could have heard some more about that. Also with special needs, the report, the Ofsted report on special needs, which was bad for us and for the schools and for the health service, resulted in an action plan. And I think by this stage we should be hearing how the action plan is being carried out, not just that there is one. And thirdly, I think we should have more information on Foundation for Jobs, particularly on our youth employment programs. But that begs a further question, which is, does your role cover, as mine did, children's services, education and skills? Because if it doesn't, then obviously we'll look for that information in a different report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanaway. Councillor Pallister. Sorry, Councillor Hans to reply.
Right. In connection with the support for early help, yeah, £1.2 million was diverted from the early help to frontline statutory work. In actual fact, the new package is actually working well, and childminders and parents are actually setting up their own provision, which was always an element that we wanted to encourage. The most deprived wards in the borough, Grangetown and South Bank, although they are not the main hubs, they actually have services delivered every day, so non-statutory services delivered every day, and this also applies to a lesser extent in Redcar. We still have a core offer. As you're aware, the family hubs were originally Sure Start, and of course that was a universal offer, but it is now targeted. The three hubs are in, the central one is in Redcar, the East Cleveland one is in Saltburn, and the West is in Ormsby. So, as I say, the three main hubs offer statutory and the full range. The two most deprived wards, although they're not main hubs, they also deliver the full range. And as I say, parents are stepping and care childminders setting up their own provisions. So I think I can say with some confidence that that every child who needs it is getting the service that they require. Right. Regarding your question about the Foundation for Jobs, etc., no, skills is not part of my portfolio. I'm sorry. What was the other? Oh, could you give me what page it was on? Sorry.
6.
Yeah, I agree that it's a fairly general remark. Obviously, the 4 key areas are detailed in the paragraph. work is obviously ongoing to address these items, but I do not at this stage have the more detailed information under the actual headings. I know that we are obviously addressing them, and I will investigate and see how far along we are with the various headings. Was there anything else? Sorry, Councillor Hannaway, I got a bit lost.
Just, you could write to me with that one. If
I
you
will
want.
do, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. We have 4 more speakers. Could I just remind you that this is questions for succinct and relate directly to the report. Councillor Pallister.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Barnes, for your report. My question is on the new free school in Grangetown, 4.23. I'd just like to ask the Cabinet member if ward councillors could be kept up to date with choosing the new academy provider, their previous experience and achievements. And my second question, once the academy providers are selected, can you ensure that ward councillors are given the opportunity to meet with them?
As you no doubt know, we don't actually have the academy providers will be decided by the government, not us. But certainly members will be kept up to date with what is happening, and also I can't see any reason why you wouldn't have the opportunity to actually go and meet with the providers once they are decided upon.
Councillor Corley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to speak upon 4.3 school performance. It would be really good in future if we could have figures in comparison to last year to this year. I do know that our primary schools were amongst some of the highest achieving outside of London and in the country. So it would be nice to see, and also regarding the exclusion rates, I would like a breakdown, if I can, on what schools and how many exclusions. It's just within that paragraph, it's 3 lines, and it's quite a big chunk that seems to be missing for me for a report, especially when it's an annual report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Corley. Councillor Cook. Sorry, Councillor Barnes.
You keep forgetting me.
I was thinking we were going to answer them all at the end.
Yeah, I appreciate that the information in it was brief. That is because the information was available through other sources. However, I do actually have some more information here. In reality, there were 9,000 days lost through fixed terms exclusions in Redcar and Cleveland last year. This was an increase by 1/3 from the previous years, and in 2018-2019 there were actually 92 exclusions over 18 schools, and 9 schools had only 1 exclusion, so obviously the other 9 schools were responsible for the bulk of the exclusions. In 2017-18, that was compared to 63. So in other words, it went up from 63 to 92, which is obviously the wrong way. And we're hoping, by virtue of the reorganisation of education services and the actual resources that we're putting into this, we have actually appointed an officer to look at exclusions specifically. And also, of course, we've got the Task and Finish group who were so successful in creating the transition. Yeah, and Redcar schools are more than 4 times the national rate to have a fixed term exclusion. And in terms of the ratings, you're absolutely right. The primary schools, I think we're in the top, certainly the top 90%. I haven't actually got the figures, but for secondary schools, We were actually in the bottom 3% in 2018. I haven't got the 2019 figures. And in terms of Progress 8, which is a nationally accredited level, we were 147 out of 152. So by any measurement, I'm afraid, in terms of secondary schools, we're not doing terribly well. However, as I say, the directors have put plans into place to improve the situation, and obviously that's what our aim is, to make things better.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On 2.6, the special needs inspection, there's a duty to improve the commission services, and I don't know if you know, but we commission a youth club service from Maine, which is being run at Tuned In Redcar. It's now being relocated to Gisborough, and all the transport's being cut, and I'm told this is because of the cost that we charge our commission services to hire rooms. Now, we've only now got currently 5 children attending that service, and I'm wondering why we charge for inter-service bookings that we're commissioning ourselves when we have buildings empty, and then spend money on administering those payments, and if it could be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Barnes.
Right. I believe that this part of this query is something which has already been raised with the directorate, and you are in correspondence with the officers about this. In answer to your question about the charging, I'm sorry, I know nothing about that whatsoever. However, I will find out for you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got one question, and it relates to the new venture that we are undertaking in order to provide a service to support children with autism. Clearly, this is a very, very wide area. I'm pleased that there is a start being made, but I'm slightly apprehensive that it appears to be because we found some extra accommodation and not because it's a positive move. I'm not saying that that is what it is, but that's what the report gives the impression of to a degree. So, highly commendable that we are picking up this baton. What I would like to see, if at all possible, is a small, short briefing note to members as to how we're identifying children that need support and how we're going to be delivering that, and what resources we think we might need to have in place to have a success in that delivery.
Right. In connection with the Cooper Centre that you're referring to, a number of staff were moved from, well, in fact all the staff were moved from the Cooper Centre up to Inspire to Learn, which meant that these premises were vacant. We had an inquiry from, I think it's called Autism North East, to take over those premises. We are charging them, or we propose to charge them a peppercorn rent. They are but we're not responsible for any maintenance or any alterations of that nature. They offer training, so they offer in-service training for teachers on autism matters. And they also have an in-house service for children with autism. I can't remember off the top of my head the numbers, I have to say. It's not a huge number, I'll admit. But at least it is a start, as you so rightly say. However, in addition to that, the new school in Grangetown, which is due to start building in 2020, because originally Hartlepool were involved in it and they subsequently withdrew, it meant that their places, which that would have been allocated to Hartlepool, have now actually been allocated to the actual partners who are in there. So that means that the numbers have gone up, and also there is provision within that particular school for children on the autism spectrum. Again, I don't know the numbers offhand, but I can certainly let you know.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Thank you for that comprehensive report. We now move on to item number 9 to consider motions. 3 motions have been received. Motion 1, moved by Councillor Quartermain and seconded by Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Council was appalled to see the Supreme Court's humiliating judgment that our Conservative Prime Minister had acted unlawfully, proroguing Parliament and misled our Queen. Whilst in opposition, the leader and members of her cabinet spoke out forcefully and voted against any council tax increases. Now after only 4 months in office, they have publicly declared they have changed their minds. Therefore, in order that the leader and cabinet can avoid accusations that they have misled local residents, this council calls on the leader to make an urgent statement to the people of Redcar and Cleveland, clarifying why they appear to have made this major policy U-turn so soon after being elected.
Can I second the report and reserve the right to speak, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to comment on the motion and propose an amendment if I could. As an independent who wants to play no part in national politics, I can't vote for the first paragraph of this motion, but by voting against, I'd also be taking a view. This leaves not only myself, but the independent group in a difficult position, though I'm not entirely sure why the paragraph is included at all, as a prorogative of Parliament has little, possibly no connection to the partnership's position on council tax. The entire paragraph seems to be a political statement which has been tagged on there. The second paragraph isn't factually correct. The cabinet is made up of independent and Lib Dems, and just from memory, at least 50% of the cabinet never voted for council tax rises over the last 2 years, and 1 member is new to the council. The third paragraph, however, I do somewhat agree with. There's some benefit in the leader of the council providing clarity over the partnership's position. So I'd like to propose the following amendment, Mr. Mayor. Remove everything up to the words "this council" in paragraph 3, replace urgent with immediate, replace people with residents, and replace why they appear to have made this major policy U-turn so soon after being elected with the partnership's current position on council tax. So the amendment will read, this council calls on the leader to make an immediate statement to the residents of Redcar and Cleveland clarifying the partnership's current position on council tax. And I move the amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Could we have a seconder, please? Could you put your mic on, please?
Thank you. From above, I can't. There's been a precedent set at this council, and this was certainly the case when we were in the leadership group of the council, that all amendments to motions have to be submitted in writing. I'd like to see it in writing.
Has everybody got the amendment? Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak in support of the amendment. And I don't think he's listening, but I'm surprised Councillor Massey put his name to this. He is, after all, a university lecturer. And you must see that there's a complete non sequitur between the first paragraph and the rest of it. It's got nothing at all to do with the council tax. I just can't understand. If you read it several times, also, it's impossible to tell if the mover and seconder of this motion is appalled by the Prime Minister or appalled by the Supreme Court. You just read it through. It could mean either. It's just rubbish. And it's a bit like Brexit's Labour policy. Nobody understands it. What's prorogation and the Supreme Court got to do with Redcar and Cleveland's council tax?
Could we have some silence while the speaker's speaking, please?
It's just a load of nonsense, and you just try, I don't know who you're having a go at, the Tories and us at the same time. How dare Labour accuse us of doing a U-turn on the council tax? The previous Labour administration did the biggest U-turn on council tax this council has ever seen. If they'd been in much longer, they'd have put us back where they had us before, with the second highest council tax in the land. It's a good job we managed to unseat them. In 2015, desperate for power, Redcar and Cleveland Labour made an impossible pledge to the electorate, now listen to this carefully, to freeze your council tax bill, to freeze the whole bill. A pledge they knew quite well was impossible to honour. Impossible because they had no control whatsoever over the police or fire authority or the parish council precepts. So how could they freeze the whole bill? They made a false promise to freeze the whole bill, but had no power to carry it through. In short, Labour deceived the electorate by promising what they knew damn well they could never deliver. To add insult to injury, our Labour-controlled council increased that part of the council tax bill over which they did have control at every possible opportunity, 4 times in all. Unlike Labour, the present partnership administration is honest from the start. We will only raise the council tax as a last resort. But if we were forced to impose a minimal rise, it would be because of relentless Tory cuts and the profligacy of the previous Labour administration. Labour is guilty of false promises and big spending. It's Labour's bill we've been forced to pick up.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Nightingale.
We'll follow that. Yeah, well, here's the Liberal Democrat position. First of all, paragraph 1. It's really strange. It really is. I really would have thought that if the Supreme Court unearthed illegality, we should be welcoming this. It really is rather obscure what the purpose of paragraph 1 is. And there's no doubt that it's not difficult to be appalled when the Prime Minister is taken to court in this way. Anyway, let's move on. Let's look to the future. Let's look at. You really want to know what the Liberal Democrat position is, I'm sure. As far as our manifesto was concerned, we clearly, categorically, absolutely, and positively stated that we would only be increasing council tax where there was no alternative to do otherwise. What the mover needs to accept as well is that fundamentally the current position of this administration has made, this administration has made no final decision, no final categorical decision on the level of local taxation. It's made no final categorical decision on the ingredients of the 2021 budget. like the previous Labour administration and all others before it, the final draft budget will be subjected to public consultation in December. That's when people will be able to have a look at what's going on. And I think we need to remember that we live in a world where there is deep uncertainty of what is actually going to happen in the future for all sorts of reasons. And there are several points that I think that this council needs to accept. First of all, austerity for local government has not gone away. All councils still face huge challenges. The situation is a little different from when Labour controlled the council. The second point is the current administration, as Councillor Kay has very resolutely and informatively provided us with information. We inherited financial problems from the previous administration. The lack of the provision of reserves is a fundamental issue that we really do need to have to address, and it needs to be rectified. The third point, the current administration has taken unprecedented initiatives in organising an all-member conference to look at the budget options. Why would we do that if all the budget and local council issues have already been foreclosed? Members will have the opportunity, and we'll look at this in the next motion, I'm sure. So I thought that I would have thought that the Labour position would have been to have more member involvement. And let's not forget that all members have the right to vote on the budget in March, when the final budget and the final local taxation issues are actually put before this council. To repeat, here's the Liberal Democrat position once again. The Liberal Democrats made no council tax freeze promise. Our position is absolutely clear. And the other thing that we're absolutely clear about is that we're committed to ensuring that this council has the sufficient resources to provide adequate services for the residents of this borough. So I think it would be very wise of us to actually support the motion, the amendment that's been put forward by Councillor Baldwin. This is the strangest motion. Well, I'm speechless.
Thank you, Councillor Nightingale. Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps I could provide some clarity because people seem so unable to understand what the first sentence is about. And what the first sentence is about politicians misleading the people whom they purport to represent. And that the example that is provided in the first line, in case none of you are looking at the news, is the current example. The example of where our Prime Minister has misled the Queen in relation to proroguing Parliament. The word here that we need to focus on is mislead. Mislead, mislead, mislead. And that is the purpose of this motion, to highlight to the people of Redcar and Cleveland that you as an administration, and it's interesting to hear that we have a different Liberal Democratic view perhaps to an independent view, have chosen, well, I'm sorry, but Councillor Nightingale made it very clear as a Liberal Democrat view that he was speaking about, have chosen to if you could not interrupt me, please, have chosen
I can't answer you all at once. If you all put your lights on and shout at each other. We're not in this classroom. Just please listen to the speaker, and then we'll have a debate. Thank you.
And I assume I'll get some extra time now. So this is what it's about. It's about misleading. And I have to go to Councillor Kay straight away. You know, we've had this debate for the last 4 years, haven't we, Councillor Kay? What did we say in our manifesto 4 years ago? We said we would freeze council tax for 2 years, and that chair, he's doing it again.
Could you please let the speaker speak? Otherwise we'll be here all night.
I am telling the truth. We said we would freeze council tax for 2 years. If you look at the figures that are provided by government on council tax increases in Redcar and Cleveland, you will see that council tax was frozen for 2 years. What went up, and this was nothing to do with us, what went on was the adult social care levy. And the adult social care levy was, was imposed by the Conservatives because they refused to fund from central taxation the important service of paying for looking after our older people. And that's why we put that on, and I wouldn't have expected us to do anything else. What was misleading? What was misleading?
This point of order, please.
In the speech by Councillor Jeffrey, what we really should do is actually look at, she was talking about misleading, and what them, that word doesn't actually appear in this motion.
Yes, it does.
It says this.
It says twice. Misled.
Misled.
And
oh yes,
misled. Yeah,
right.
Twice.
But
Have
let's
you read it?
let's look at the first part of that sentence.
Chair, this isn't acceptable.
Yeah,
He's making a point of order. Please allow him to do so.
You're appalled to see the Supreme Court's humiliating judgment that the Prime Minister acted unlawfully. Why were you appalled? I wasn't.
Chair, I'll explain it one more time. I will explain it one more time for those of you who don't seem able to understand. The issue that I am raising, or that has been raised in this motion, is about politicians misleading the people whom they purport to represent. And that is the point that is made by that first paragraph. If we could return to the issue of council tax, which is the important one. Councillor Kay said at the meeting, just the other week there, the meeting when we were talking about the chief executive, he said, what did he say? He said, and I've got it written down here somewhere, I most certainly can remember, he said, and I'm just thinking about the correct tone to put this in actually, he said, in all our independent leaflets, we told the people we were going to keep the council tax as low as possible. That is what he said.
With this coming up, I checked my leaflet, I said nothing of the sort.
Chair, with this coming up, I played back, much to my sadness, the recordings of this council meeting, and I can tell you it is what you said, Councillor Kay, and you can have a look if you don't believe me. The fact is that every single independent councillor in this room elected on an understanding that they were either going to keep council tax down or not increase council tax at all. That was the words of Councillor Kay at the meeting on the 23rd. The Liberal Democrats might be in a different position. I don't know, because they...
Explanation. If I don't think I said that. If perchance I did say it, I was wrong. And
do you know, if that isn't misleading the people of Redcar and Cleveland, what is misleading the people of Redcar and Cleveland? And the Liberal Democrats, to be fair, you know, they voted for council tax increases over the last 4 years. They have supported the budget that this council has put in place. And for anybody to try and suggest that the budget that we have put in place over the last 4 years, or any element of that budget, is in some way not the collective responsibility of the people who were in this chamber just 6 months ago, then you are entirely and completely wrong, and it is a diversion that nobody is going to listen to. So we come back to the purpose of this motion.
I will allow you 1 more minute.
Thank you. We come back to the purpose of this motion and why I don't think we should accept the amendment, and that is because you collectively, particularly the independents in this council chamber, have misled the people who voted for you. And just for a couple of quotes, just a couple of quotes from previous meetings, just so you can be clear that these are the reasons why people might think this of the independents. Councillor Kay, they do not have a bottomless pit of money. People cannot afford it. The council is snaffling their money. How long can this go on? People cannot afford to pay. Councillor Lanigan, people are on the edge. This is making it worse. We cannot sustain it. Councillor Kay again, you know, as I've already said, telling everybody that the independent leaflets had a pledge to keep the council tax down. Well, Councillor Kay was talking collectively for you. You're all in one group. You're all in one group. So, to come back to the original point, mislead is the word that the motion uses. Mislead is what you've done. And your contortions now,
Councillor Jeffries,
to be
time's
perfectly
up.
honest, are really pretty embarrassing.
I didn't want to interrupt anybody speaking, but doesn't the Constitution say that we are now speaking to the amendment and not the original motion, which doesn't appear to be happening?
Right.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Eyre.
Yes, thank you there, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking against the amendment, but having said, well, I'll be voting against the amendment. But I would have thought the last person, Mr. Mayor, there to give a history lesson on council tax is from Councillor Kay. Let's go back there to 2003 to 2007 when he was part of the cabinet. Yes, I'll keep raising it as you keep raising history against us, Councillor Kay. 2003 to 2007, a 4-year period, he was part of a cabinet that raised Redcar Borough Council taxes by 24% plus. Enough said. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any increases that we made at that time was because of the black hole that you left.
Councillor Quartermain, can you sum up, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the amendment, for it now to read, this council calls on the leader to make an immediate statement to the residents of Redcar and Cleveland, clarifying the partnership's current position on council tax. I've got no issue with the amendment, but let's make this very clear. During the past 4 years, while our administration trimmed and juggled services under Shaping Our Future to ensure this council stayed afloat, those opposite, the independent group specifically, continually voted against council tax rises. In the face of Tory austerity that stripped this area of over £100 million in public funding, those sat opposite continually voted against council tax rises. Whilst we froze council tax for the first couple of years and then kept rises at the lowest across the Tees Valley, those opposite voted against council tax rises. You continually told the electorate that you opposed council tax rises. You campaigned with that message. So it's a bit rich that now you're in administration that you're saying, oh, hang on a minute, this is a bit tricky. You know, we said that about raising the council tax. Well, actually, we're going to do that now. Instead of criticising Labour locally for the shortfall, you should be condemning the Tories nationally for stripping this and every other authority across the country of their funding. You should be thankful we didn't become another Northampton. And Councillor Kay, if you put up council tax, it will mean you got into power under false pretenses. And if you do so, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Leaflets, my election leaflets round the Labour group, and there's no mention there of me not voting for a council tax rise. By the way, we're not even proposing one yet. You're just making it up.
Right, thank you, Councillor Kay. Right, we're now going to go to a vote whether or not to make the amendment. All those in favour? And against?
Is that 4? 5?
Right, the amendments passed 42 to 7. We're now going on to vote on the amended motion. Debate the amended motion. Councillor Nightingale.
Thank you very much. I don't really want to prolong the debate. I just want to do some helpful clarification of members of, first of all, perhaps a bit of history. Councillor Eyre raised the issue of the 2003-2007 coalition administration. We did inherit 3 years of 0 council tax increases from the Labour Party, when they did absolutely nothing at all to do something about the state of performance of the council. And one of the biggest issues that we had to face and pay for was the fact that we had to deal with equal pay, which is fundamentally absolutely the right thing to do. Secondly, I do recall that the Labour Party, it must be 2015, would it be, promised to have a 2-year council tax freeze, and in fact they only gave us 1. But that's history. One little bit more of history, that they say they were trying to imply that the budget that we have inherited for this year was one that the Liberal Democrats supported because we voted for the council tax increase. Nothing of the kind. I made it quite perfectly clear at the budget meeting that we did not support the ingredients of the budget, but we did believe that the council needed resources to carry out its tasks. And of course we were also aiming to take control of the council, where we could have done something about the budget, and we've already started to do that. On the point that I think Councillor Kay and Councillor Quatermain went to daggers about, Councillor Quatermain and Councillor Jeffrey do seem to think that we've already made a decision to put the council tax up. I did say in the remarks I made earlier that no such thing. I'll repeat it, in fact, because it was so good. Fundamentally, the current administration has made no final categorical decision on the level of local taxation. If you've got a point of order,
could you please get to your feet?
Or the final categorical ingredients.
Was it not Councillor Baldwin that moved the amendment?
Councillor Nightingale.
Oh, sorry. I'll do it again.
Was it not Councillor Baldwin that moved the amendment? I don't know why Councillor Nightingale's speaking.
Well, I'll just explain.
Councillor Baldwin gets to sum up.
On the
Would you let him
revised
speak, please?
Where the leader will be asked to make a statement. I'll say it again. Right? Fundamentally, the current administration has made no final categorical decision on the level of local taxation or on the final categorical ingredient of the 2021 budget. Okay?
Thank you, Councillor Nightingale. Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, I suppose I've only got one thing to say on that, and we shall see.
Councillor Baldwin to sum up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just say to sum up that I look forward to the leader clarifying the position on council tax.
Right, the amendment now becomes a substantive motion, so we go to the vote. All those in favour?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the meeting of the Cabinet, it was revealed that this council had a funding gap of 9.5 million. This could potentially mean further reductions to council services that have already been cut to the bone, services that affect everyone living and working in the borough. Of course.
Mr. Mayor, I have been asked to make a statement following that motion. Am I allowed to do that in chamber?
You can,
it was asked for immediate...
excuse me, you can only do it as a point of order or in a previous motion.
Point of order. Thank you. It's not appropriate for the statement to be made now. That statement needs to be made outside of this meeting, Chair. It's not an agendaed item.
I think that's what I just said. Go ahead.
Simply for clarification, Mr. Mayor, if I may, in order that we are not misled as a chamber, can we have an interpretation of immediate?
Just give us a second, we're just consulting. Yeah, the leader of the council can make a ruling after this meeting, not in the meeting. So we shall carry on. Council Quartermain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and we look forward to your report. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. At the last meeting of the Cabinet, it was revealed that this council had a budget gap of 9.5 million. This could potentially mean further reductions to council services that have already been cut to the bone, services that affect everyone living and working in this borough. This council believes that all councillors should be able to consider in detail any proposals made by the Cabinet, along with our staff, trade unions, partner organisations, business ratepayers and council taxpayers. To this end, and in line with the motion agreed by members at the Resources Scrutiny Committee in September, this council recommends that the Cabinet hold an all-members meeting by no later than the end of October to discuss all options being considered to reduce the funding gap and to publish a programme setting out full details of its arrangements for consulting with the groups listed above. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
This will be circulated to members. Do you want me to wait while it's circulated, Mr. Mayor? It essentially means that after the 9.5 millions, we add this figure is no longer blah, blah, blah. I'll explain that in a moment. That we add a still after the could still, in other words, would say. Delete all of the third paragraph and substitute that the Council welcomes and endorses arrangements for a new innovative seminar of members consultation session on the 6th of November. This actually is, and then you've got the substantive motion as it would appear if the amendment were to be passed. The purpose of this motion really is quite unclear. It's out of date and may even be superfluous. There are three issues. First of all, this motion calls, what this motion calls the funding gap is based on what I said at the Council, of the Council's financial position, and I did actually say that this was subject to change as more information is received. And the Council report would be outdated by December when the government clarifies the grant settlements. The financial position of the Council is constantly changed as we get new information in, both from the directors and from sources outside the government. Councillor Corsmain very helpfully reminds us that the efforts of the partnership have been reasonably successful because when we first took office, the funding gap, as he calls it, in other words, the pressures on the budget, were actually £34.2 million. So if we'd actually got down to £9.5 million, it would be a major success, and in fact we're even going further than that. The action of the partnership and the officers have been very successful in facing these pressures and doing something about it. So the funding gap is no longer £9 million. There's also the issue of the government grant, which we still need to receive full confirmation about this. The upshot of this is that we fully intend, as Councillor Massey rather boastfully maybe said earlier on, is what they had in the past, and that's what we intend to have as well. The second point is that the need for a series of consultation is actually enshrined in the Council's constitution. So again, that particular point in the motion may be actually superfluous, but it's worth repeating. And it's a fairly, what the motion calls for is really fairly routine. The third point, and this is what is new, is the decision of the current administration to invite members to a budget conference stroke seminar. And at that conference, members will be able to review the financial situation that the Council faces, and in fact, if they wish, offer options. The decision to hold this was taken before the Cabinet papers were actually drawn up, and the notification was actually sent out last week. The date was chosen as the most feasible. It is, of course, a few days after Halloween, and of course, Halloween is one of these dates where we do have a known unknown, or a known unknown unknown known. We don't know what's going to happen on the 31st of October. So I'm sure members will accept that the partnership is absolutely committed to involving all members of the Council in the decision making, especially about the budget. And it invites all members to make their suggestions for future initiatives for the benefit of the borough. And consequently, would you please support this amendment?
Can we have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Lanigan. Councillor Jeffrey.
Mayor, but I've just got a couple of things to say. The first is the use of the word innovative. Yet another example of misleading this instance, the Council. This Council has been having all members' seminars to look at budget issues for the last 4 years, and if you want to look back in your diary, you will find the ones that you have, or maybe have not, attended, Councillor Nightingale. Secondly, in terms of misleading, this issue was raised at the Resources Scrutiny Committee, where members of the independent group voted for this motion as well, because they were not aware of any consultation arrangements that have been put in place. And indeed, it had to be raised again here today. In terms of the 95 million, those were your words, as you say, and if that amount is going down, then all well and good. But we need to know collectively, as a council, where those service cuts are going to fall and what services are going to be affected. And that is a joint decision. So I'm very glad that you have come round to see that the way that the Labour administration dealt with cuts is also the way that you're going to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm pleased to hear about the strenuous efforts that are going on the other side to reduce the 9.5 million, but as Councillor Jeffrey said, it would be useful for members to know exactly how you're going to do that before the 6th of November. It's such an important thing. We've just heard, 20 minutes ago, that you haven't made a decision on council tax yet, and yet you've been having all these strenuous efforts to reduce the figure of 9.5 million. I'd be surprised if one of those wasn't a council tax rise in the funding gap, because the funding gap assumes that there's no council tax rise. So at the moment, you must have had those discussions, and you're not sharing them with the wider council or the wider public, despite everything that happened during the last motion. So I think this is unnecessarily political. There's no reason to put the thing about the Labour administration. You were aware that there was a funding gap every single year that we inherited a budget. Throughout our time in office, certainly from the time I was in, from 2015 to 19 as the Resources Cabinet member, we have to deal with a funding gap every year. It's nothing to do with the previous Labour administration, it's to do with the government of the day. The government of the day does not provide this council, or pretty much any council north of London, with enough funding to do statutory services alongside all the great things that we do as well in this borough. That's the reason we have a funding gap, and I think it's misleading to say this because of the Labour administration. I won't be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. Councillor Watts.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm sorry, but I have no faith in this partnership giving us honest information at a members' meeting. In their own partnership agreement, they've got a little discreet subcommittee scrutinising everything that goes to Cabinet, and yet they cannot honour resources scrutiny, appointed officially. The minutes are here, but they've been slipped in. Every single point that we asked officers present or Cabinet members present for figures, we were given nothing. We were told the figures are to follow. That was in September. We're now in October. We have been given no figures. Surely, if they're in discussions, these figures must be somewhere in the arena. And for a resource scrutiny not to be given financial figures is a disgrace.
Thank you, Councillor Watts. Councillor Hannaway.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, talk about hostages to fortune, eh? I'd just like to say thank you to Councillor Nightingale for giving me some words that I can quote back to him for the next 4 years. You're overcoming the legacy of the previous Labour administration, are you? Well, the number of children in our care is still going up. The causes that bring them into our care out there are still getting worse. The expensive regional placements that we rely upon for our most vulnerable children in care are getting more expensive because it's a buyer's market. In adult care, the costs of adult care are going to keep going up because we have an aging population, a massive rise in those numbers coming up in the next 10 years. So all I can say really is good luck with it.
Thank you, Councillor Hannaway. Councillor Quartermain to sum up.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On the amendment, we obviously can't go with the paragraph. The second paragraph, it says this figure is no longer the case, blah, 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 previous Labour administration. We obviously can't go with that. I would like a point of clarification from you, Councillor Nightingale, in terms of your third paragraph. The Council welcomes and endorses arrangements for the new innovative seminar and members' consultation session to be held on the 6th of November 2019. Can you just clarify that that invites all members to take part? Can you clarify that that includes every councillor, all members?
We can't have the word you, innit? We've been doing it for the last 4 years.
All members. Okay. Okay, thank you. It doesn't say all members in your paragraph, so I'm just making sure and hammering it home that everybody's included. That's all it is. It certainly is an innovative because, thank you. I'm glad you're not confused anymore. I would scratch the word innovative because we've been doing this all along. And if you've missed them, that's your failing, I'm sorry to say. But aside from that, we'd scratch the first paragraph is fine, second paragraph as is on the papers originally. The third paragraph, I can go with that as far as that you add that all members are part of this and you scratch the word innovative and new.
We can only deal with the amendment that's on the table. That's the new amendment.
I'm quite happy to put a new amendment further, but this amendment we cannot agree with.
This one has to be voted on first.
It's factually incorrect, so how can any...
Right, we'll go to the first amendment. Can we have all those in favour, please? And against? Right, that amendment's carried. Councillor Quartermain, if you want to put in the second amendment, you may do so.
Spoken before, we'd take out the first paragraph, we'd carry on with the original second paragraph, and we'd happily go with that third paragraph and remove new and innovative, which you should have really gone with, I think.
I'm going to circulate it as we were
Yeah, can you
earlier on.
The amendment needs to be circulated, Councillor Quartermain.
I think we'll come back to this, Mr. Mayor, because it would waste the members' time and it won't get passed anyway, so what's the point?
Okay, thank you.
Point of procedure. Whilst not wishing to cease having a comprehensive debate, if a matter arises from an amendment that is proposed, and in that amendment there are matters that can be considered worth reviewing, if we have a procedure whereby I now would like to propose an amendment of one word, I've got to go away and get that typed up. So this is not improving debate. Therefore, I would ask, you have made a ruling, and I respect that. I would ask that the Governance Committee, under the 151 officer, go away and look at procedure. It seems perfectly reasonable to have an amendment in writing. But if we are then going to have several amendments, we either respect the amendments and take the time to do the administration, or we prevent people having that opportunity. And that is not democracy, is it?
Order, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry to delay this. I'm perfectly willing to accept, and that means you don't need to send any papers round at all, the word all. In fact, the invitation, I've just been shown the invitation that's gone to members. It does actually say all members as well. And in the previous paragraph, it says all members as well. So that is incontrovertible. And I'm quite prepared to get into some debate on what the word innovative is. Maybe I'll come back to that if I'm allowed to speak on the main motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nightingale. Thank you, Councillor Thompson, for your input. We'll take that on board. The amended motion now becomes a substantive motion, so can we vote on that, please? Councillor Nightingale to sum up.
Mayor, on the point that Councillor Jeffrey made about there have been other of these seminars and so forth, I honestly don't recall these, and I was actually chairman of the Resources Committee. I was given the information that we hadn't actually done anything like we're proposing. Perhaps it does relate to the word innovative and something that we may do in terms of asking for options. I don't recall. I think it also relates to one of the points that Councillor Thompson was making earlier on. But I think we'll leave that for the time being. I should certainly check the dates with the officers whether there were these events and what the actual format was and what the results were of that. In addition to that, I think it may be Councillor Massey I'm responding to here. I don't remember any continual commentary being provided on the budget situation and the budget planning by the Labour administration when they were in power, which it seems to me to be what they're offering. I suspect that they may well have had in their individual group continual commentaries on the state of play of the budget. What they've got to recognise now is that they're now in opposition. If they wish to have consultations with officers, they're perfectly entitled to do that, and they're perfectly entitled to put their own proposals forward. On the point that Councillor Hannaway made, it's with the greatest respect, I think it is almost unworthy of him to suggest that I don't feel sympathy with what you actually achieved in the children's services. I was really referring.
What I was pointing out was that services, social care services to children and to adults taken all together is 3/4 of the entire council budget. So the fact that we're having more children in care and that placements, costs of placements are going up, etc., and I think in the next 10 years we're going to have a 50% increase in the number of elderly people requiring care, that you're very unlikely to be able to reduce this gap and, as you say, overcome the legacy of the Labour administration.
Yes, I was actually referring to the financial legacy that we had to face, and it's quite clear that there's quite a lot of, let's say, feather bedding in the content of this. On the point that Councillor Watts makes, again, I think that really was unworthy in suggesting that we were a bit dishonest, and I hope she will withdraw that remark. As far as the substantive motion is concerned, I do now commend it to the council and allow them to vote on this. Allow members to vote.
Oh. Councillor Watts, can you put your mic on and stand up, please? I can't see at the back.
You didn't say I could, Mr. Mayor. I am not being dishonest The minutes of the resource committee are here, and it says in there no financial information was available but would be forthcoming. That was in mid-September. We've had nothing. If we're going to have a members' meeting, we need information, and it should certainly be given to official scrutiny meetings.
I didn't accuse Councillor Watts of being dishonest. I got the impression that we were being accused of being dishonest. However, Mr. Mayor, to further the procedure of the council, I move the amended motion, and I hope that all members of the council will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Nightingale. Can I just remind you, the meeting is about to exceed 3 hours in length. We're automatically adjourned at 5 o'clock unless Council decides to set aside Standing Orders number 9. We would like to get through today item 10, and we also have motion 3 to go. So could somebody propose how long we extend for, please?
Mr. Mayor, we extend the session to 5:15.
Thank you. So we'll end business at 5:15 then. So we'll now move on. Right, so we're now voting on the substantive motion. All those in favour? All those against? Motion's carried 38 to 12. Right, I'd like to go to item 10 before we go to the next motion. Could somebody second that, please? Thank you. So motion 10 is to appoint new members. We have to vote on the seat on the Teesside Pensions Board. There's 2 people involved, Councillor Billy Eyre and Councillor Julie Craig. Oh, sorry, Councillor Craig's withdrawn. Billy Eyre to be appointed. Good, yeah. Anybody else? Just to go through that. So just read out there on it. So TVCA Audit and Governance Committee, Councillor Sanders Smith and Berry to replace Councillors Pallister and Eyre. Inshore Fisheries, Councillor Fletcher to replace Councillor Baldwin. We need to appoint a member to the Pensions Board, which is, where was it? Councillor Eyre. Councillor Hunt to be appointed to the vacant seat on the Merchants Navy Welfare Board. Everybody agree on that?
Thanks, Dave. Under 10A, TVCA Audit and Governance Committee, unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, we cannot approve the changes, and that is no reflection on the independent councillors who I'm sure will represent the council admirably in these committees. But we believe these changes present unfair proportionality. Labour is still the largest group within this council, and we've received no feasible explanation as to this change. Just on that point A. Thank you.
I just clarify that this was actually looked at, Councillor Quartermain, not by this authority, but by the combined authority. and it was looked at across all 5 of the local councils, and they took that proportionately across that, and it was then felt, because they brought the independents in from Thornaby, Stockton, and they lumped all those together, and that's why we've got the change. This is nothing to do with Redcar and Cleveland Council. This has actually come from the combined authority, not from local councils, and it's gone into their statute books. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I take the point, and we know this, but we've received no physical explanation of why this has happened. This is just what we're getting from you. So as it stands on the paper, we will be voting against that. Thank you.
Can the others be agreed? And we take this one for debate further on. Right, thank you. We go to motion 3, moved by Councillor Jeffrey and duly seconded by Councillor Quatermain.
And if so, I do apologise. Have we done any changes to committee membership?
Apologies, Councillor Thompson. Committees, Resources, Scrutiny and Improvements Committee, Councillor Teasdale to replace Councillor C. Holmes. Okay. Thank you. Right, we go to motion 3 now, please.
I'm really sorry, actually, that we haven't got a bit longer to talk about this, because this is a really important issue for our borough, the creation of jobs, manufacturing jobs, and other jobs indeed, and the impact that some of the changes are having at the moment, and what more we can be doing collectively. But I do just have a few comments to make. I'll take the detail of the resolution as read, or the motion as read, but I do just have a few comments that I'd like to make about it in moving it. Those of you who were around in 2016 will know that I stood here in this council chamber then, following the closure of SSI, and spoke about the catastrophic job losses that we had experienced across the Tees Valley. At that time, in 1 week, we lost a total of 4,000 jobs, and that was in 2016. Since that time, the focus and effort of this council, both alone and working through the combined authority, has been to secure investment, deliver new jobs for our borough and for our people. And we've had some real success. We've built strong relationships with industry and business locally. The SSI task force has developed new ways of supporting people back into work. And our employment and training hubs, which I think have been mentioned at other times today, have achieved national recognition for their work. But this motion is here now because despite all this programme, there is real danger that Redcar and Cleveland is facing a new jobs crisis. And this time, instead of leading the fight back, we're standing on the sidelines watching it happen. So what evidence have I got for that? Well, first of all, let's start with some statistics. Unemployment is stubbornly high in this borough. And it's not easy to provide those figures because there's currently no agreement of the measure of unemployment across the Tees Valley, and the monthly unemployment bulletin that we used to receive is no longer available to us, and I think this is a problem. But in May this year, we had 3,935 people claiming unemployment benefits, 4.8% compared to 3.1% nationally. The number of people that we've got in work is around 70,000. That is 6% lower than in the rest of the country. 11% of our people have no qualifications at all. Gross weekly pay in our borough, and some of you may have seen some of this on the telly last night about coastal towns, is £480. That's over £90 less than other places in Great Britain. These statistics are really stark, and they stand as evidence that the situation is just not getting any better. And I just want to take a little look at what's going on out there at the moment. Some of you may remember May 2017 and the Prime Minister coming to visit the borough. She came along to announce the launch of the South Tees Development Corporation and herald the 20,000 jobs it would bring. The same year, the Evening Gazette shouted that the Chancellor's budget was game-changing. Hundreds of millions of pounds was going to be available to invest in new jobs. There was going to be the promise of free ports and special economic areas. What's the reality? Actually, that cash has been spent on keeping the South Tees area safe. It's not been spent on delivering new jobs. And last January, whilst the Tees Valley Mayor promised he would never raise taxes, he has no compunctions whatsoever about taking our business rates to fund the development corporation that his government had previously promised to pay for. So what about all the jobs we keep hearing about, you might say? Where are they? Where are all these jobs? So we'll start with carbon capture and storage. Again, that's been mentioned today. Carbon capture and storage, absolutely crucial to us. If we're going to have an industrial base in a net zero carbon future, we've got to find a way to capture the carbon. So despite huge pressure from local industry, from our Labour MPs for more investment, there's actually been very little progress made. 2017, again, the Tory Tees Valley Mayor was telling us there was going to be an imminent jobs boost. 2018, a jobs bonanza, and just last week, 4,000 jobs were coming. But actually, all that's happening is that we're getting a study. That's all that's happening. There's not likely to be any jobs on that from that plant until at least 2024. And what about some of the other big projects? Sirius Mines stalled because of lack of government support. Night shift gone and 300 jobs with it. Plans for an Atlantic superconnector, a pipeline that was going to come ashore at the RBT port, would create 500 jobs. The backers are now saying it's going to go somewhere else because of lack of government support. 2 metalworks projects promised by the Tees Valley Mayor that would unlock 1,500 jobs, 14 million in the budget for it. No sight of them. And what about the 4x4 Land Rover vehicle that was going to be built in the South Tees site that we heard about a year or so ago? Again, 1,500 jobs. Where's that being built? It's being built in Wales because the Welsh government are supporting it. Our government would not. On Wilton, there's no progress on the new power station, and the rare earth metals refinery, we still aren't any further forward. And of course, RBT, the project that's furthest on at the moment, has been delayed and many people are laid off. We do have some positive news, and I was very pleased to hear what Bowlby had to say in there. It's good, and I hope they get their planning permission. But what that will do in the first instance is merely sustain the jobs we've got. It won't create new ones. It might create new ones in the long run, but not straight away. And similarly, we had some good news yesterday about ENSUS and biofuels. And we know that British Steel at Lackenby and Skinning Grove will very probably be okay, but we haven't got that finalised yet. But there are casualties from that. The world-renowned Manufacturing Innovation Centre, MPI, which is in my own ward, has had to lose 20 jobs because of loss of British Steel funding. And employees are working reduced hours. That is our innovation centre. That's where our future will come from. That is what is going to fund the way we're going to produce new manufacturing in the times to come. And the fact is, it wasn't supported and it wasn't saved. And I do have to ask where our leader is in all of this. You are Vice Chair of the South Tees Development Corporation and lead member for inward investment on the Tees Valley Combined Authority. And until this week, I hadn't heard you make one announcement or propose any initiative to address what I'm seeing as a mounting jobs crisis. In fact, initially, when you heard about Sirius, you just pushed it away, saying it was press exaggeration. I'm pleased to see you've now written to the government, but it has taken until this week to do it. That's disappointing. And the SSI task force. We've suddenly seen a lot of activity on the SSI task force this week, haven't we? But is it meeting? I don't know. I haven't heard. Does it have a chair? I don't know. Well, again, it hasn't been announced if it does. So, you know, I'd be very interested to hear about it. And the fact is, it's the SSI task force that provide the partnership arrangements that allowed us to address a lot of the issues around jobs. The council has a corporate plan that puts jobs and growth at its heart. We seem to have abandoned those objectives And it looks at the moment, unless somebody tells me different here today, and I'd be very pleased if you did, that instead we are sleepwalking into a new jobs crisis. What I'm asking you to do over there is to lift your heads up a little bit, to look a bit further than where the floor in this council chamber goes and whether the Pride Awards should just be held every second year, and actually think about the things that really matter to our people, maintaining their jobs, their families and their communities. They should be our priorities. So I call on every single one of you in this chamber to support this motion, to get this council properly focused on supporting our business and industry, stabilising our economy and growing the good quality jobs we so desperately need. I cannot imagine how anybody could vote against this motion. Thank you.
And I'll second and I'll speak now if that's okay, Mr. Mayor. Because we are running out of time, I thought I'd do it, get it in. When mass job losses were expected but unconfirmed at the SSI Works in 2015, because pay and bonuses were frozen, I contacted Amanda Scoutland, the CEO, and asked what we were going to do in order to support these workers and their families to ensure they received support, not only to get back into work, but to ensure they received a safety net fund and a swift response from the DWP. She reassured me that this was already in hand and the SSI task force team was already in hand and being set up. It was set up immediately with workers, MPs, the government, trade unions, council leaders, businesses and agencies. The work of the SSI task force team continued throughout the next 4 years, helping the employees affected by the closure. The rapid response and safety net cannot be understated at a time when Christmas loomed and everyone rallied to ensure these families received support. Subsequently, there have been many successes with almost 2,000 new jobs having been created, many with ongoing monitoring. 500 jobs were safeguarded and 51 former SSI apprentices were found employment or training. And in terms of training, almost 24,000 training courses were delivered across 10 sectors using £9 million in funding. Many self-employed businesses were created, such as construction, offshore services, gas and electrical, catering, gardeners, trainers and retailers. Many new businesses have found support within the growth plans. It's not all been plain sailing or a fairy tale for many. Many have reduced salaries and terms and conditions, but the fate and fortunes of the vast majority of these former steel workers and supply workers was vastly improved by the creation of the task force. It would be advisable to ensure this work continues and that we have a voice within this council, within the task force team. We want to make sure that we provide a safety net to those that are struggling to not only pay their bills, but to be presentable and afford the travel to job interviews. And we also want to make sure that the mechanisms are there that encourage employment, such as job fairs and training opportunities for all those that are unemployed and who have lost their jobs and are looking for work. I'll leave it there, Mr. Mayor, because of time, but I recommend that we make sure that we're very much part of this going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Quartermain. We have 4 more speakers and we have 3 minutes, and then we've got to go to the vote. So, if you're going to speak, could you please make it quick as possible? Councillor Kay.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. You know, I think a lot of this is crocodile tears, and I resent Labour playing politics with serious minerals. They've made a massive investment in my ward. You know they're in difficulties. This isn't going to do any good. Broadcasting that, in your opinion, our local leaders aren't helping in any way. In fact, it's utter tosh. Nobody could fight harder than Ben Houchin, in my opinion, for this area. You know, I've never seen a Labour mayor do anything like that. Mary Lanigan, as in my
We're running
ward,
out of time.
as
Be
in
quiet,
my
please.
ward, Mary Lanigan knows that the future of East Cleveland could depend on Sirius. We don't want you rocking the boat. Mary has fought as hard as anybody possibly could to persuade the government to underwrite the problems there. And really, I just wish, if you don't know much about it, just keep out of it, because we've lost hundreds of jobs. The whole thing's been slowed down and put on review. They're looking for another partner. Just let them get on with it quietly without stirring it up. Nobody could do more than this side to support Sirius Minerals.
Thank you, Councillor Kay. Councillor Lanigan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I need to ask you, this is a very serious issue, and I would ask that you would give me at least 2 to 3 minutes to go through this.
Is that agreed? Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Lanigan.
Councillor Jeffrey, I am surprised by what you've said. Up until 12 weeks ago, you were part of South Tees Corporation and had been for 3 years. You were also chair of SITE up until September. So I'm quite surprised that you are now criticising this administration and me in particular over here. When Cabinet stood that day, and you were actually there and Councillor Quatermain was not, it then appeared on Facebook, Councillor Lanigan doesn't care. Councillor Lanigan had a meeting with Cirrus Mining and their top executives the day after. So it wouldn't have been satisfactory for me to make a statement at Cabinet, not knowing the facts from Cirrus Mining as to what way forward they were going, nor would it have been prudent of me until I had spoken to officials around this area. I have had several meetings with Cirrus Mining. I don't think, Councillor Jeffrey, and I know that you have a relationship with them over you being leader prior, that they are very happy about what you've said in this motion. Cirrus Mining are working at a pace, and I am not prepared to discuss this in an open chamber as to where they are with their negotiations going forward.
Point of personal explanation here. I have not put anything in this motion or said anything in my remarks that has not been in the press. And, you know, for anybody to suggest that in some way I am giving away secrets is just complete nonsense.
May I continue, Mr. Mayor? Thank you.
Go ahead, but bear in mind we're now 5 minutes over.
I'm sorry. The current administration is well aware of the various issues that we're facing in our local economy, and we are working extremely closely with our business partners to ensure we are helping to deliver their ambitious progress. I had a meeting with MGT in the last 48 hours, and it has demonstrated the company's commitment to the project and ensuring completion of it in time. Conversations with, and that is what's progressing. There is further information, and if the leader of the Labour group would wish to come and see me, then I will discuss that with you and you can take it back to your group. conversations with South Tees Development Corporation are progressing well. We have just heard before Council from ICL down at Bowlby, who are looking at their next 25-year plan, and we continue to work closely with Cirrus Mining. I have a further meeting with them scheduled over this week and next week, they are reviewing their next steps. Whilst there is political and economic uncertainty nationally at the moment, there is a lot to be excited about Redcar and Cleveland. However, Councillor Jeffrey will be well aware from her recent involvement in these issues that discussions with businesses are confidential, and it is inappropriate to be trying to talk down our local economy and make political capital out of issues that affect our local people.
I want a point of personal explanation again, please. I'm really sorry, but the leader did mention me by name. If I can just make it absolutely clear that this is not about talking down our local economy, which is the whole same old trite phrase that comes out every single time when you try and raise with people the serious issues that we are having to face at the moment. It is extremely unacceptable for the leader to suggest that this is about talking down the borough. I have done nothing but talk up this borough for the last 4.5 years.
With regard to the SS Task Force, the Council is working hard with partners to support what looks to be a very positive future for British Steel. Once this situation is resolved, we will be considering
Councillor Lanigan, your time's up.
SSI.
Can you just finish the sentence?
Important, Mr. Mayor. Can I just finish it? That we will be considering the future of SSI Task Force jointly with the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. As Councillor Jeffrey knows, the task force was established by government and focused on the jobs lost at SSI. And as we move beyond that, we will continue to push government for continued investment in this area. One announcement that I need to make here is that the Mayor of the Tees Valley has asked me to let you know that in consultation we have actually got the world's first industrial scale carbon capture and storage project. It has been announced. It has gone out to consultation and it is out there next week. Consultation will start on Monday. The newly branded Net Zero Teesside is potentially a multi-billion-pound project that we contribute enormous to our existence of our industries, and this is going to help us further on. What we've actually got at the moment is, and I do see that you've mentioned Councillor Jeffrey Thomas Cook, his Traveller picked up 555
Thank you, Councillor Lanigan.
of their outlets today, and can I also tell you that on the South Tees Development Corporation site there are 2 planning applications
Councillor Lanigan,
coming
time's
forward
up.
to the capital.
Right, we've voted to finish at 5:15. We could bring this meeting to a close and defer the vote until the next meeting. Go to the vote. Agreed? Sorry? What was it? Very quickly, please.
Just very quickly, and I know everybody's shouting no. You know, it's really sad, isn't it? We all want our teas, but there's people out there who want jobs. And that's the first thing that we're talking about here. Real jobs for real people. And I just want to make the point that Councillor Lanigan just raised with me that the Tees Valley Mayor had talked about the carbon capture and storage project. If she'd been listening to what I was saying, she would have heard that he has made that announcement on at least 4 separate occasions over the last 3 years. And as I pointed out in my speech, the fact is that that is only a study and no real jobs will come until 2024. So, well, you don't need to let him know because he knows already. He was quoted in the press saying just that. So, you know, what I expect, the leader also said we had a chair for the SSI task group, and we obviously haven't got one. I mean, and you know, as for the Sirius stuff, I could not be a bigger supporter of Sirius, as Councillor Kay knows, and the suggestion that, you know, in any way calling to account the government for their lack of support for the project is in some way detrimental to the company is complete nonsense. I hope everybody will support this motion.
Right, can we go to the vote then, please? All those in favour of the motion? And those against? Right, the motion's not carried. Can I just say that the questions that's been submitted will be answered in writing unless anybody else wants to debate it, which will come back to the following meeting. Thank you very much for your time, and you didn't do my sore throat any good at all.